Ever that voice. I hadn't heard it in 3 years, but my body recognized it before my mind did. The fork slipped out of my hand and clanged against the glass plate. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. My heart had already started sprinting, dragging the rest of me behind. Around me, the corporate banquet hall buzzed with small talk, forks, laughter. The usual pretend enthusiasm of mandatory networking events. But behind me, silence. Then heels, deliberate, nervous, too fast. She was walking toward me. I thought I'd imagined her hundreds of times at grocery stores, through blurry bus windows, a glance at a cafe, always someone else. But this time it was her. She said my name again, quieter. Everett. And this time I turned. She was smaller. Not physically, just like someone had deflated her from the inside. Her eyes looked like she'd been wide awake for years. Her lips twitched like she wanted to smile but didn't remember how. And I noticed her hand was trembling, holding a tiny glass of white wine that she hadn't touched. "You're here," she said, like I was the ghost. The moment stretched. I said nothing. She blinked hard like she was trying to reset the scene. Then her breath caught. Her bottom lip dropped. And right there, surrounded by coworkers, strangers, and marketing managers in navy blazers, she broke. Tears, rapid, sudden, unapologetic. 3 years. Not a message, not an email, not even a blocked call. Now she stood inches from me, weeping like I was the one who disappeared. People turned to look. I felt the room shift. I hated that I still cared how she looked at me, how her mouth still formed my name like it belonged to her. I should have walked away. Instead, I asked the one thing I wish I never said. "Why now?" She choked and then said something that cracked me in half. "Because I thought you were dead." That's how it started. And what came after was worse. "Because I thought you were dead." The words just sat there between us like they belonged to someone else's story. I don't even remember blinking. My breath caught in my throat, and for a second, it was like the air forgot how to move. I wanted to laugh or scream or shake her by the shoulders and say, "Are you serious?" But I just stood there with my jaw half clenched and my mind split in two. People were still watching. A woman in a silver scarf whispered something to her colleague. A waiter slowed down beside us but kept walking. The room didn't know whether to keep pretending we weren't real or to admit we'd hijacked their evening. "You left," I finally said quietly. My voice was flat, like someone playing a voicemail on low volume. "I know," she whispered. And then, as if the floor under her had turned into ice, she looked down and sat on the edge of a nearby chair. Not at a table, not even fully seated, just halfway perched, like she wasn't sure she deserved to be comfortable. I sat too, not because I wanted to, but because standing over her felt like I was watching someone else's breakdown. "You blocked me. You drained our account. You left a post-it note that said, 'Please don't hate me,' and vanished like I was something you needed to escape," I said. "And you thought I was the one who disappeared?" She rubbed her forehead like she was trying to push the memory back inside. "I know how it sounds. I know what it looks like." "No," I cut in. "You have no idea. You don't get to know what that did to me." And then, just when I thought she couldn't possibly throw another curve, she said, "Your brother told me you were gone." That sentence felt like being hit with a second betrayal before I'd finished choking on the first one. "Lucas," I said. She nodded slowly. "He called me 3 weeks after I left. Told me you went off the grid. Said your phone was smashed. That your landlord hadn't seen you. Said you didn't want anyone finding you. That you weren't well." I didn't speak. Couldn't. My ears were ringing. "Everett," she said. "He made it sound like you were spiraling." I tried to follow. I swear. I searched for your new address. I even messaged your old boss. Nothing. It was like you evaporated. And after a while, I stopped trying because I thought maybe that was what you wanted. I shook my head. I had no idea what to say. I hadn't spoken to my brother in over 2 years. Not since he tried to excuse what she did, tried to tell me maybe it was for the best. We hadn't argued. We just never spoke again. And now, suddenly, he was the reason she thought I was dead. "I left because of him," she whispered. That hit me sideways. "Come again." She finally looked up, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't just regret. It was fear. Not of me, of what she was about to say. "There's a lot I never told you," she said. "But it started with something I found. Something Lucas said. She leaned closer, her fingers were shaking. And then, barely audible, she said, "Your brother told me I was never supposed to be with you, that he had proof you lied about everything." I sat back for a second. I forgot how to breathe. "Lied about what?" I asked. She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, someone behind us cleared their throat loudly. We turned. Lucas was standing there, smiling. There was something off about his smile. Lucas always had this calm, rehearsed charm, the kind of grin you'd expect from a lawyer or a pastor's son, which he was actually both at one point. But this smile, it wasn't kindness. It wasn't even arrogance. It was possession. I hadn't seen my brother in over 2 years. Not since the night I left my apartment to crash on a friend's couch and never went back. I'd cut him off after he downplayed Savannah's disappearance like it was a midlife phase, like I was the unstable one for not just moving on. And now he was standing in front of us, hands in his pockets, watching us like this whole moment was a movie he'd already seen. "Fancy seeing you two together again," Lucas said, his voice casual, eyes anything but. Savannah's body went rigid. She sat up straighter, jaw clenched. "You said he was gone," Lucas finished for her. "Yeah, you were supposed to believe that." I felt the chill crawl up my spine. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked. He looked at me like I was being slow. "I told her you disappeared because that's what she needed to believe. You have no idea what she was about to do back then." Savannah's lip trembled. "I left because you threatened me, Lucas. Don't twist this now." The blood drained from my face. "Wait, what?" She turned to me, and her voice cracked. "I tried to tell you that night. I left you a message. It was long. I was crying. I told you everything. That he'd shown up, told me lies about you, said you had some secret debt, that your business had failed, that you were dragging both of us down, that if I didn't get out, he'd go public with things I didn't even understand. He said it would ruin everything." And I panicked. Lucas stepped closer. "I told you I was protecting her." I stood up. The chair nearly toppled behind me. "You deleted her message." He didn't deny it. He just tilted his head. "You were spiraling, Everett. Drinking every night, talking about quitting your job. I figured if I gave her a way out, maybe she'd stop enabling you. And if I gave you space to crash, eventually you'd snap out of it." "No," Savannah said, her voice rising. "That's not what happened. You tried to replace him. You kept calling. You showed up at my apartment after I left. You said he wouldn't survive without you. You made me feel like I was being watched." My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All this time, I thought she'd ghosted me. Heartless, cold, selfish. But now she was saying Lucas manipulated us both, and worse, that he was still lurking in the shadows. I looked at Lucas. "You told me she was never coming back, that she'd chosen someone else, that I should just accept it." He shrugged. "I said what you needed to hear. You were barely functioning, man. You wanted to die." My fists curled at my sides. And now he smiled again. "Now I want you to understand. You two were never supposed to last. You weren't built for her. And she knows it now." Savannah stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "You don't speak for me." Lucas raised a brow. "Don't I?" For a moment, no one moved. And then Savannah reached into her bag, pulled something out, and tossed it onto the table between us. "A flash drive." "What's that?" I asked. Her voice was steady now, controlled. "Proof. Everything. Calls, texts, recordings. He's been watching both of us. I didn't know until last week. He made a mistake. Left a trail." Lucas's face didn't change, but his eyes did. That's when I knew he hadn't expected this part. Whatever game he'd been playing, it wasn't over, but it had just taken a turn. And somehow I was at the center of it all. The moment Savannah dropped that flash drive on the table, I realized how little I actually knew about the last 3 years of my own life. The noise of the conference behind us blurred into a distant hum, like we were standing in a tunnel where everything else faded but the sound of our breaths and the unspoken tension boiling between the three of us. I stared at the tiny plastic stick, black and unremarkable, and yet it felt radioactive. I looked at Lucas. He still hadn't moved. That smug, tranquil expression on his face cracked just slightly, like a hairline fracture in a statue that had sat too long in the cold. Savannah took a step back, as if distancing herself from both of us. "It's all there. Calls I didn't know were being recorded. Texts from burner numbers. A photo of you parked outside my apartment in Tampa. You told me it was a coincidence you were visiting a client. I believed you." She laughed softly, but it wasn't joy. "God, I really believed you." Lucas finally broke his silence. "You're paranoid." "No," I said sharply. "You're cornered." I picked up the flash drive slowly, like it might detonate. I didn't even know if I wanted to know what was on it, if it really was proof or just another layer of madness stacked onto a mess I never asked for. But if Savannah was telling the truth, if Lucas had orchestrated everything, then my past wasn't just broken. It had been stolen. He shook his head, but his voice had changed, less sure, colder. "You don't understand what's at stake." "What is at stake, Lucas?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you spent years rewriting both our lives for reasons I can't begin to understand." He leaned in, his voice low. "You think this is just about you? You think I did this because I cared where she moved, or who you cried over in your empty apartment? Then why?" I demanded. He glanced at Savannah, then looked back at me. "Because I know what you did, Everett. And if that drive gets opened, so will a door you've spent your whole life keeping shut." I froze. "What the hell are you talking about?" He didn't answer. Instead, Lucas turned around and walked away. Not fast, not in a panic. He left like a man who had already decided what came next and didn't need an audience to watch it unfold. I looked at Savannah. She looked at me. "Do you believe him?" I asked. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she whispered. "But I know you didn't deserve what I did." I closed my hand around the flash drive and tried to steady my breath. The weight of it wasn't physical. It was mental, emotional. If Lucas was bluffing, we had him. If he wasn't, then maybe the version of myself I'd spent so long piecing together wasn't as real as I thought. Savannah looked around the room. "Let's go somewhere private." "Not here." I nodded. We walked past the servers carrying mini quiches and corporate execs laughing at things they didn't find funny, out of the banquet hall, into the elevator, down the hallway of a hotel that suddenly felt like a corridor toward truth or ruin. When we got to my room, I plugged the drive into my laptop with fingers that barely listened to me. The screen blinked, then a folder opened. There were files, dozens. I clicked the first one. It was an audio recording. And the first voice I heard was mine, but I had no memory of ever saying the things I said next. The voice was mine. Flat, tired, unmistakable. But the words, I had no memory of saying them. "I told her if she left, I'd make sure she regretted it," the recording said. "You don't get to abandon me. Not after what I did for her." The sound of me, or someone who sounded exactly like me, filled the hotel room like a gas leak. Invisible but suffocating. Savannah sat across from me on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen like it might spit fire. "Pause it," she said. I hit the space bar. My hands were slick with sweat. "That wasn't you," she said, her voice thin. "It was me," I replied. "But I don't remember ever saying that. Not to anyone. Not about you." She leaned forward. "Do you think he edited it? Used AI?" I wanted to agree. That would have been comforting. But the tone, the pacing, the way I sighed halfway through a sentence, it felt too real, like something from a voicemail I never knew was recorded, like a piece of my past I'd blocked so deep it took his twisted intervention to drag it back into daylight. I clicked the next file, a video this time. The screen lit up with a grainy view of what looked like my old apartment, the one I left after Savannah vanished. I recognized the lopsided blinds, the same leather couch I sold on Craigslist. But in this video, I was sitting on it, talking to someone off camera. "He says he has proof," I was saying. "But I don't care anymore. If she thinks I'm the villain, fine. I'll play the part." Savannah looked at me. "When was that?" I shook my head slowly. "I never said that. I swear to you, Savannah. I never said any of this." She didn't respond, and I couldn't blame her. If our roles were reversed, I'd probably be questioning everything too. The person in those recordings sounded like a man unraveling, bitter, dangerous, vindictive. And yet, I couldn't remember feeling that way. I remembered the grief, the holidays, the long nights, but not this level of rage. I clicked the next file. This time, it wasn't my voice. It was Lucas, crystal clear. "You think I'm the bad guy?" he said, his voice low and smug. "You think I'm doing this for me? You have no idea what he's capable of. You don't know what he did in college, what he covered up, I'm not rewriting history. I'm preserving the future. Savannah's eyes widened. College? I froze. My stomach turned. He's bluffing. She watched me carefully. Is he? I stood up and walked to the window, suddenly needing air I couldn't get. I pressed my palm against the cold glass and stared down at the street below, headlights streaking across the wet pavement like ghosts. I didn't answer her right away, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure how much truth I even had left to give. Everett, she said gently. What did happen in college? I turned back slowly. There was an incident. A girl I was seeing, her name was Marn. Things got messy. There were rumors. People took sides, but nothing was proven. Nothing happened. Lucas, he was involved in it, too. He lied to her about me, played both of us against each other. In the end, she dropped out, and I buried it. Savannah's hands were folded tightly in her lap. You never told me. Because I wanted it to be over. She nodded. Well, maybe it isn't. The screen was still glowing behind us, dozens of files still unopened. My life dissected and weaponized. I sat back down. Whatever's on that drive, I said, it's not just about us anymore. It's a trap. He wants to destroy everything I have left. Savannah nodded slowly. Then we don't let him. We open it all. We burn him with his own fire. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years I saw the woman I married. Not the one who left, not the one who cried at a banquet, but the one who stood by me once in another lifetime. So we kept going. And the next file shattered the last piece of peace I had left. It wasn't video. It wasn't audio. It was a contract, signed by Lucas and co-signed by someone I never, ever expected. At first, the contract didn't make sense. It looked like a standard NDA, 2 signatures, a confidentiality clause, a list of items marked evidence inventory, and a payout sum typed neatly at the bottom. But what caught my eye was the date. Just 10 days after Savannah vanished from my life. And the second signature, my father's. I stared at it for a long time, hoping maybe I was wrong. That maybe it was a coincidence, a similar name or a forgery, or some legal ghost from years ago dredged up by Lucas just to mess with my head. But it wasn't. Savannah stood behind me, silent. I felt her eyes scanning the screen, her breath shallow. I didn't even know they spoke, she said finally. They didn't, I replied. At least, not that I ever knew. I hadn't talked about my father in years, not since his quiet fall from grace. A retired attorney with a perfectly pressed wardrobe and a reputation for discretion. He wasn't a bad man. He was a safe man, the kind who made you feel guilty just by blinking slowly at you when you disappointed him. We were never close, but I didn't think he hated me enough to do this. The contract detailed a payout of $60,000, transferred in exchange for the removal and storage of digital assets, recordings, and personal history logs. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere, but the metadata folder referenced an internal case Lucas had labeled Project Reverie. Savannah read aloud slowly. Storage and restriction of materials linked to subject ECM to be coordinated by LRM with shared custodial access pending behavioral resolution. ECM, she whispered. That's you. Everett Cole Morgan, I said. Jesus. I sat back dizzy. The room felt too bright, too narrow. Lucas didn't just manipulate Savannah. He didn't just lie. He didn't just disappear me from her life. He created an entire shadow operation, a project to erase and rewire pieces of me with the help of someone I hadn't even known was involved. You think your dad knew what he was signing? Savannah asked. I let out a bitter laugh. If he signed it, he knew exactly what it was. He just didn't think I'd ever find out. Savannah's voice cracked. Why would he do this to you? That question echoed in the silence. I didn't have a good answer. All I knew was that my father had always believed in image over truth. He believed in control. And maybe Lucas convinced him that I was a threat to that legacy. I opened the next file, a scanned letter from my father to Lucas, dated 1 week later. You were right to bring this to me. My son doesn't understand what damage he's capable of. If this is what it takes to keep the Morgan name out of scandal, then so be it. He will thank us one day. Savannah gasped. My chest burned. They think I'm some kind of liability, I said. Like I'm a walking PR crisis. She turned to me slowly. What did they think you did, Everett? I wanted to say nothing, That I was just a man broken by betrayal, manipulated by people who couldn't leave well enough alone. But I couldn't ignore the voice files anymore, or the pieces of memory that were beginning to slide out of the dark. There were blank spots in my past, things I chalked up to trauma. But maybe I never fully knew what they buried. I need to see him, I said. Lucas. No. My father. Savannah looked at me like I'd said I was going to swim with sharks. You think he'll tell you the truth? If he doesn't, I said, then I'll know the truth is worse than anything I imagined. Outside, the rain had started hard, like the sky was trying to wash the city away. I packed up the laptop, slid the drive back into its case, and tucked it into my jacket. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know who else Lucas had convinced. All I knew was that the man who raised me had signed away my future with the same pen he used to sign my college applications. And if he had helped rewrite my life, then I was going to burn every page he touched. I hadn't spoken to my father in 4 years. And now I was parked outside his house in the rain with a flash drive in my pocket and 1,000 silent questions chewing holes in my brain. The lights inside were on. Same exact porch light as always. Dim, yellow, and flickering, like the whole place was quietly resisting the passage of time. It wasn't a home. It was a vault. My childhood lived inside that house like a sealed box under a bed. Untouched, inconvenient, and waiting to rot. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just walked up and knocked. After a long minute, the door opened. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner, still sharp in the eyes, though the kind of sharp that cut without moving. His face didn't register surprise, just quiet calculation, like he was already rewriting the reason I was standing there before I spoke a word. Everett, he said simply. Can I come in? He stepped aside without answering. The smell hit me first. Pine cleaner and old books. The scent of discipline and silence. The walls hadn't changed. Same paintings, same frames, same perfect alignment. You could live here for a year and never feel like you belonged. I sat. He didn't offer coffee. He just sat across from me, hands folded, and waited. I found the contract, I said. No blink, no shift, just a soft exhale, like he'd known this day was coming. I assume you've spoken to Lucas and Savannah. He nodded. Then you know I did what was necessary. My throat tightened. You signed away my life like it was a loose end to be trimmed. I protected our family name, he said flatly. You weren't well. I leaned forward. That's the story Lucas sold you, and you bought it. His eyes didn't waver. It wasn't hard to believe. You remember the girl, Marn? The name landed like a slap. I sat back slowly. I never hurt her. No, but she said you did. And perception is everything. She lied. She was confused. So were you. You were unraveling. Lucas saw it. I saw it. I didn't bury your life, Everett. I preserved what was left of it. I stared at him. Then tell me what Lucas told you. Exactly. What lie was so convincing you decided I wasn't worth protecting? He was silent for a long time. Then he stood, walked to the fireplace, and opened a drawer built into the mantel. He pulled out a folder thick, yellowing, tied with a cloth string. This was mailed to me, he said, placing it on the table. Anonymous sender. 6 weeks before Savannah left. Inside were recordings, journal pages, text messages. Some real, some not. Lucas confirmed the contents. Said you were cracking. Said Savannah wasn't safe. Said if we didn't intervene, you'd ruin your own reputation and ours with it. I untied the string with numb fingers. Inside were photos. Some of me, some of Savannah, some altered, some real. One looked like a police report, except there had never been a report. There had never been a charge, just a rumor that became gospel in the right hands. This is all fake, I said, flipping through. Not all of it, he said quietly. That's the problem. Some of it is you. Some of it is the anger, the phone calls, the depression, the drinking. It wasn't just Lucas. You didn't even ask me, I said, my voice shaking. You let your silence tell my story for me. He lowered his gaze. I thought if I erased the problem, you'd recover. I looked down at the folder again. The pieces, the edits, the handwritten notes in the margins. Someone had spent months compiling this. A dossier designed not to expose the truth, but to reshape it. Lucas hadn't just lied. He'd curated a false version of me, a villainous version, and delivered it in a form no parent could ignore. Savannah had never stood a chance. Neither had I. "I'm going to expose him," I said. "Everything. The recordings, the drive, this folder, the fake contract, all of it." My father looked tired for the first time in my life. "If you do that, Everett, he'll drag you down with him." "I'd rather drown in the truth," I said, standing, "than float on a lie you helped build." I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, he spoke again. "You weren't supposed to see that contract." I paused. "He never sent it to you," he continued, almost in a whisper. "So ask yourself, who did?" I turned slowly. "What are you saying?" He looked at me, eyes dark with something that might have been fear. "There's someone else involved. Someone Lucas is afraid of. Someone who sent that flash drive." And just like that, the story cracked wide open again. It was her. The one who sent the flash drive. Her name was Marn Laurie. The same woman I'd once dated in college. The same woman whose name Lucas used to blackmail Savannah into vanishing. The same woman who had vanished herself, moved out of state, changed her number, disappeared from social media like someone trying to outpace a shadow. Except she hadn't disappeared. She'd been watching, and now she wanted to set the record straight. The email came 3 days after my meeting with my father. Short, no greeting, no signature. "I know what Lucas did. I was part of it once. Not anymore. Do what you have to do. I'm ready to testify." That one message ended a decade of gaslighting. We met in a public library, neutral ground. She looked older, not fragile, just worn. Like someone who had carried too many secrets and finally decided to unload the heaviest one. "I believed him," she said, her eyes not meeting mine. "Back then, I believed what Lucas told me about you, that you were obsessive, that you might hurt me." He planted the doubt. "And once it took root, everything you did looked like proof. And now I know the difference between manipulation and memory," she said. "He used me. He used all of us. But I'm done letting him speak through me." With her sworn statement, the flash drive, and my father's folder, the pieces snapped together like a lock breaking open. We went public. Not in the tabloids, not on social media. We submitted everything to an ethics board, one Lucas never imagined we'd reach. The law firm he worked with gone. His consulting contracts scrutinized. Quiet calls were made. Old alliances fractured. Lucas lost everything. His license, his board seats, his polished, untouchable reputation. He didn't fight. He just disappeared. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the real victory, it wasn't revenge. It was clarity. For the first time in 3 years, I woke up without bracing for the next lie, without hearing my own voice twisted against me, without questioning every memory of my past. Savannah and I didn't fall back into each other's arms. That's not real life. We didn't rewrite our vows or vanish to a beach house. But we did sit across from each other one afternoon, share a cup of coffee, and finally speak like two people free from the weight of what had been done to us. "You deserve the truth," she said. "So did you." She smiled. "And now?" I thought for a second, then said, "Now we begin again, whatever that means." I didn't need to reclaim everything. Just my name, my story, my piece.